I think that the Queen is about to come on your screen, Chewy. So do you need to have an appropriate hat on or something? Or do we stand and...
No, I haven't got a tiara. Maybe I should. Okay. But I like that.
We should definitely do that. You should put your swag hat on, and I should get a tiara for any time the Queen comes on screen.
But that face that Seymour's got on there, that is the appropriate face for someone that is about to be sprayed down from head to toe.
Yeah, well, this is great because I've just been criticizing some in the media about, and look, I'm not criticizing Jenny May, because you don't always, I mean, sometimes we go away from interviews going, I should have asked that. So it's not that, but it's just that no one ever asks the sorts of questions, and no one ever asked the question directly to David Seymour of, do you call for a ceasefire? And guess who does? The other guest. So let's have a look at David Seymour. We say versus, I don't care. Chloe Swarbrick talking about Gaza and what should be happening.
Let's talk about Gaza. What did you make, Chloe, of Labor coming out, the Labor leader coming out and saying, even though he's caretaker prime minister calling for a ceasefire, which is out of step with what National has been saying and the caretaker government itself has been saying?
It's about time. I mean, look, in the course of the time that we'll be sitting on this couch for this panel, approximately 10 minutes or so, 2 Palestinians will die. One of them will be a child. We have a civilian population, which is approximately half the population of Aotearoa, New Zealand, crammed into a geographical area, which is a third the size of Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and they are being systematically carpet bombed. You have, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, organs of the United Nations who are calling this ethnic cleansing, a genocide, and just abhorrent beyond all measure of humanity. It is incumbent on all political leaders in this country to stand up to the plate and to say that they call for a ceasefire, a return of hostages, and actually, I would say for the incoming government to recognise the statehood of Palestinians.
Okay, you mentioned the hostages.
Is that one of these? The microphone? But look, what she said. Right? But what she said was very good. These are what the experts are saying. This is a resolution to state, and also hostages have to be released. There's nothing there that is not balanced. Stop killing civilians, release the hostages, find a solution. That's what she just said. Who could complain about that? Well, some people could complain about that, obviously.
You would, of course, call on Hamas to release the hostages.
Of course,
she just said that.
Without doubt.
She just said that. She just said that, Ryan. So this is what we talked about last week. Why are people who aren't in the pocket of Israel, why do they always get asked to denounce Hamas, yet people who are in the pocket of Israel never get asked to denounce the war crimes that they're committing? She just said, and return of the fucking hostages. Ryan's first question, but you would want the hostages returned, wouldn't you? She just said that, and you're still getting her to defend it. You're still getting her to denounce the actions of Hamas. I hope you're going to ask David Seymour to denounce the bombing of apartment buildings, killing 15,000 civilians. About 6,000 or 7,000 of them right now being children and women. I hope you are, Ryan. Because if you don't, you're just a fucking hack that needs to get another job.
Why Israel is hesitant to do that without the hostages being released.
Yeah, I got to say, look, again, this is all being negotiated by the Qatari government at present. But the other point I would make, Ryan, is that based on reports out of actually some of the Jewish families themselves who have been involved in this atrocity, who have had family members abducted, they have been actually really upset by the actions of the Israeli government and some of the reports.
Of course they have. Israel is bombing places where their people may be being held. Israel could be killing the hostages or a section of them. If you are, and I don't know whether this is accurate or not, it's always the accusation, but if you are using human beings as shields, then if you're using the hostages as shields in Israel, you're killing the hostages right now. Doesn't mean that we're saying Hamas should be holding them, but if you're bombing the places where the hostages are, then you're killing the hostages as well as civilians.
Actions from Benjamin Netanyahu, who apparently has not been prioritising the release of those hostages.
Yeah, they have. Some families have some concerns around that, no doubt about that. But I suppose, I mean, it's all very well for us to sit on this couch over here and try and understand the intricacies of both sides of this.
I do have to say though, Ryan, I mean, look, you only need to look at the response of politicians in this country on the issue of Ukraine, for example. You only need to look at the position, for example, of the ACT Party in calling for the expulsion of the Iranian ambassador and calling for the expulsion of the Ukrainian ambassador.
It's a point that's been made many times online. What? How do you differentiate these two conflicts, and why is your stance?
Just quietly, it's a point that's been made many times online. Ryan Bridge is actually saying we would never ask this question, but like I've seen it asked on Twitter, but we would never ask this question. It's a point that we've seen many times online about the different standards of act when it comes to Ukraine and Gaza. It's a point that we've seen a lot online. Why haven't we seen it on the breakfast show? Why haven't we seen it on the AM show? So, are you maybe showing a bit behind the curtain there, Ryan? Maybe?
Somewhat different on both.
Well, it's not different at all. We, in all three cases, while the circumstances are quite different, have been clear that humanitarian needs come first, and then we get into the detail of what has actually happened. Now, without traversing Russia, Ukraine, and Iran, which we could do,
because that would be inconvenient to my argument now. So can we please leave that for now? Please, let's not get into that argument.
But we took positions on those given the circumstances at the time. In this circumstance, let's just remember how it all started, because that's been forgotten. Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, was the aggressor, went into Israel, they raped, murdered, David, and took hostage hundreds of people. They have still got those hostages.
Yeah.
Israel is defending itself.
Yes, but
how many more rockets were they supposed to allow to go over the border before they started defending themselves?
I guess the problem is you've got to look at what's in front of you here and now, don't you? And I agree. It was Hamas that started this particular conflict.
And it's Hamas that continues it, because it is Hamas that holds the hostages.
But that doesn't give Israel carte blanche to just respond in any way it wants, does it?
And that's not what they're doing either. There's an incredible double standard here. If any other country...
But truer words couldn't be spoken, David Seymour. There's an incredible double standard here by people like you giving a different response to the Ukrainian situation than the Israel-Gaza situation. Yes, you are correct. You're just missing the point that you're making that about. Chewy, you seem like you're about to explode. Do you want to say something before we get to Chloe nailing this man's feet to the ground?
David Seymour always frames his arguments. He chooses the battlefield. He'll set the parameters of what he's going to discuss. Hamas started this. No, there's not a single thought leader that can look at the Middle East and go, yes, this is a clear starting point for what I'm talking about. Things that happen now had their conditions set many years ago. And that is probably one of the biggest things about unraveling the Middle East specifically, and any issue around Israel, is that you go, well, these guys did this, but they did this because you did this. And then you did that because these guys did this. And that all started because this guy drew a line on a map 100 years ago. And can you think of Seymour having a conversation about these things? He's just drawn a field of combat that he wants to discuss. It does not work. It doesn't work. And he's drawn his position. This guy should never, ever be anywhere near foreign policy ever. It offends me on how stupid this is. And you can track in real time how much of an ass kicking he's about to get. It's almost like a graph. You look at Chloe Swarbrick's eyebrows and see how close they get together. The closer they get, the angrier she's going to get. And she is going to wipe the floor with this man who has a depth of thought equivalent to a children's paddling pool. Oh, fuck, he annoys me.
And what you're actually saying, Chewy, is one of the places Chloe goes about the start of this. And the difficult thing about this conversation is that the atrocities, the international laws that were broken, the war crimes that were committed by Hamas entering places like the music festival are an initiation of what's happening today, but they're not the start of the conflict. And that's what you've said, Chewy, and it's what Chloe's going to get to in a minute as well. So let's let the Queen speak.
It was attacked the way that Israel has been attacked. I think the world would be saying, yes, this is terrible, but actually the right thing to do is for the other guys to release the hostages and stop attacking Israel. In this case, somehow Israel is at fault, and the calls are for the Israeli ambassador to be expelled. I'm sorry, but that is completely wrong.
No, I am absolutely sorry, because I cannot let that stand. I mean, you have the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, you have agencies and organs of the United Nations, you have Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, international lawyers across the globe that are saying that this did not start with October 7th. Absolutely, we abhor the abhorrent actions undertaken on October 7th.
Yeah.
But this started
it's a longer
75 years ago, when 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homeland. They now are pushed into areas where there are border walls around them, and they are not able to engage in the same level of just even being day-to-day citizens.
Totally.
They live under laws which are effectively apartheid.
I think what David's referring to is this particular phase of the conflict. As you said, it has been running for many decades.
And look, and they too are victim. I mean, I feel for the Palestinian people, but they too are victims.
I feel for the Palestinian people, but just not enough to get Israel to stop bombing them and flattening their apartment buildings.
Pile
but I feel
of
for
dead
them.
kids is not yet high enough.
Yeah, not quite.
Victims of Hamas. This is a terrorist organization. This is an organization that mixes up humanitarian and civilian activities with terrorist activities. Now, the right answer is for Hamas to release the terrorists first and foremost, and stop terrorizing their own people and stop terrorizing people in Israel. If that happens, then we are okay.
Do you want Hamas, the military wing of Hamas, to be destroyed?
Terrorism should not exist.
Right. So you want them gone.
Let me be really crystal clear here, because I don't think that this question has been put to David anywhere near forthrightly enough by media. David, do you call for a ceasefire?
I call for the hostages to be released.
Do you call for a ceasefire, David?
If the hostages are released, then maybe you can have a ceasefire.
Are you willing to call for recognition of Palestinian statehood?
No, I'm calling for a two-state solution,
which requires acknowledging and accepting that Palestine exists.
Yes, and that means that, of course, it means Palestine exists.
So, will you support a motion to acknowledge Palestinian statehood in our parliament?
Not while Hamas are running it, because at the moment
this is the problem you get. I mean, I understand.
Perpetual feedback loop. Hamas was originally supported by the Israeli government in order to keep under suppression the Palestinian people. Again, we need some historical context here, and I think that it's incumbent on our political leaders to stand up to the plate to call for that ceasefire. Because, David, what you're currently practicing is whataboutism. Well, 12,000 innocent civilians.
Chloe, I'm not sure you're on the moral high ground on this issue, to be quite honest.
I do think, Chloe, you can raise your voice and shout. I don't think anyone sitting on this couch.
I think I was shouting. It's very passionate.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say you were shouting, but I don't think anyone on this couch wants to see what's going on in Gaza right now happening. Anyone wants to perpetuate that.
The two of us on this couch, Ryan, hold positions of privilege and power in our parliament. One of us is a major leader of an incoming government. We have the opportunity to join with other international leaders and use every ounce of political power that we have to facilitate that call for ceasefire and ultimately to facilitate that two-state solution, which requires recognising Palestine.
And your call for ceasefire is regardless of whether any hostages are handed back or not.
If we have that ceasefire and the end to the abhorrence which is currently being rained down on civilians...
But do you call for a ceasefire even if the hostages are not returned?
Both have to happen simultaneously, Ryan.
Right so
now,
then you both have the same position.
No, we don't. It's not, because a ceasefire results in the end of unnecessary suffering and deaths.
I think that this is a very complex issue, and frankly, there's been far too much politics played over it. We need to first of all recognise the humanity, then recognise the complexity, and then speak calmly for a solution.
All right.
Which is a ceasefire.
We have to leave this here, I'm afraid, because we
apparently.
Oh, how can we politicize a war?
Yeah.
War is politics with the gloves off.
And we have to speak calmly. I don't know. I don't think there's too much we can add to that. Chloe Swarbrick, for Prime Minister, for President, for whatever she wants. It's like, I'm going to bed angry tonight. But what happens is TV3 needs to get to their ad break before the news. So we'll just wrap this up here and leave a whole bunch of questions hanging. And You know, like Ryan said, no one here wants to see this. Yeah, but only one of the three of you is calling for a way for it to actually stop. Certainly, Seymour actually said, you know, I'm not calling for a ceasefire until the hostages are released. Well, so there's not going to be a ceasefire, because
So
equally you could say Hamas aren't going to release the ceasefires until release the hostages until there's a ceasefire, and then it goes around and around and around. And this is the important part to hear: more civilians die.
That's
at the end of a Jewish missile, or an Israeli missile, I should say. At the end of an Israeli missile.
You attacked us and you stole a whole bunch of our citizens and we want them back. And that's why we're bombing you. Okay, we want the bombings to stop and we want some of our grievances to be aired. Yes, we have all your hostages. Will you stop bombing us? Not until you give us our hostages back. Okay, how about we give you some of the hostages and you stop the bombings for a little bit and we can talk about this. Like, that's like literally that's the negotiation. Like, and you have intellectual giants, just colossal intellects that we can muster. The walking haircut Ryan Bridge and David Seymour, who sounds like he's about to slip into a Valiant coma.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Like, it's just like, if I speak slower, I'm going to sound like I am smarter than I am on an area that I very clearly, and I want to reiterate this to you, Ryan, that I have absolutely no knowledge or expertise on it at all. I just named one of the countries, Iraq. That's not one of the countries that's involved at all. How foolish of me.
Yeah.
Still, I'm the smart one, and my colleague here is a woman, so should be disregarded because she's a gentle soul, a lovely little girl who should be knitting and looking at kittens. That is what's implied there. And she just destroyed both of them and should, by rights of combat, take both of their jobs.